Hello, everyone. We're back. And we want to thank you all for joining us for another episode of Health Condition Corner. I'm Sonia Thompson, Community Content Manager for Supply Side 365, and the man of the hour, or the half hour in this case, is none other than the herbal pharmacist, David Foreman. David, it's always really great to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm just hoping this thunder and lightning stuff that's going on around my house right now stays far enough away that we don't get disconnected.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a little rainy out here today as well, and in Louisville, Kentucky. Not as exotic a place as you were last time in Spain, but you know.
Exactly.
Well, I've
Yeah.
really been looking forward to the topic of today's Health Condition Corner, which is about sexual health. And by sexual health, we're talking about the anatomical, physiological, genetic, and physical attributes that define if a person is male, female, or intersex. This session isn't about gender or gender identity because those things don't necessarily match a person's assigned sex at birth. I just want to put that out there before David begins. And I also want to let everyone know that David is happy to answer any questions that you might have. Just type them into the chat. And if we have time after his presentation, we'll answer them. Even if we run out of time, David will jump into the discussion afterwards and provide you with some feedback. It's just the kind of guy he is. So David, whenever you're ready, we're ready for you to begin.
I am definitely ready. And thanks for the, I don't know, it's not a disclaimer, whatever you want to call it, Sonia, on what this is about. I'm excited to be here today. If you have missed any of these, I think I've done 5 or 6 so far. They're on a range of different topics. You can find them on Supply Side's website. As Sonia mentioned, today's discussion is on sexual health, and regardless of how you identify, the way I'm approaching this is really based on what parts you currently have. And or if you are in the midst of a transition, going male to female, female to male, and you're receiving hormone replacement therapy, would be part of one of the things that would go on with that. That may have an impact on this topic as well. So like she said earlier, regardless of where you stand, I will be using the terms male and female, men and women, and whatever parts you have currently and or hormones that you're producing that revolve around what those meant, that is what we're discussing today. So I did my own little, by the way, there will be an awful lot of innuendos going on through this thing. Some of them, and I'm very much a pun intended kind of guy. This is a very serious subject, and yet a lot of people like to sit back and, snicker and giggle when you talk about sex. And if it goes the way I plan, I'll even roll the bus over myself today. So let's get started. As I always like to do, I like to get inside the numbers on what's going on with regards to sexual health. And we can see here, based on statistics, that actually more women have issues with sexual dysfunction than men. There is more of a prevalence between what we call painful sex. It's actually a disorder. I will actually be discussing that in a little while. Arousal disorder is pretty much split both ways for men and women. And even though we have different parts, in this case, arousal can mean different things. For men, obviously, I think people go, it's a penis. For women, it's clitoral or clitoral, however you want to say that. But in women, it also can have to do with vaginal dryness and blood flow in that area as well. And then, of course, we have 2 different forms of orgasmic disorders. We have, 10 to 15% of women have an issue with having an orgasm, and about 30% of men with premature. And I like to joke around, so here you go. I'm guessing that the majority of that 30% are the 18 to 21-year-olds. Just saying. All right, so let's get into what the definition of the different areas of sexual dysfunction looks like. This was not put together by me. Actually, this came from familydoctor.org. There were 5 basic areas that encompassed what sexual dysfunction is for a female, and 4 for men. You can see that desire disorder is pretty much the same across the board. for male or female. So basically, you're having no longer have an interest in having sex, or you just have less of a desire. Arousal disorder in women is basically, we're talking about a similar thing with erectile dysfunction in men. So basically, you can't feel the sexual response in your body, and you can't, or you can't stay sexually aroused. The same thing happens for men. We have difficulty perhaps getting an erection or maintaining it. And there's lots of reasons why. We'll cover some of those in a little while. Again, the whole orgasmic disorder in men, it's usually premature is probably the more popular, but what I am hearing more so among my friends that are 50 and over, that there's also this issue with men with a delayed orgasm. And I'm going to roll the bus over myself. I'm actually noticing that in myself now. Granted, I became single again a little over a year ago. And yes, I have been active. And, I can tell you that depending on situations, et cetera, that I'm thinking my partner's probably happy that it's taken me longer, but I don't know that to be true. And, but with regards to men, it could be one or the other. And with regards to women, it's usually more so of just the inability to really have an orgasm, or they actually have pain during their orgasm. And a lot of that has to do with the muscles that are involved when male or female has an orgasm. In women, sexual pain disorder is actually something I'm going to discuss it a little bit more thoroughly later on in the presentation. I did mention that men do have an occasional issue with that, but I believe it was 5% or less of the men actually have that. So it's not actually covered as part of a sexual dysfunction in men, according to the Family Doctor website. And then, of course, we both have these hormone imbalances where with women, it's reduced estrogen can affect desire. But I will say, I left it out of the slide, but testosterone actually in women plays an important role in your libido and blood flow, et cetera. And of course, for men, testosterone is the main or primary hormone that is involved for with us in sexual dysfunction. So again, getting into I like to give everybody the background on stuff. This really is supposed to be designed for R&D, formulators, et cetera. But I always like to give people a little bit more background so you can relate to what's going on here. These are the main contributing factors to sexual dysfunction. Drug or alcohol use, drug meaning illicit drugs, alcohol. I remember this growing up in pharmacy school when we were talking about alcohol, which is actually a drug. I remember, I think the professor taught us it was Shakespeare that said, alcohol provoketh the desire, but inhibiteth the performance. And anybody that consumes alcohol periodically and you're out on a date or whatever you want to call it, you will definitely understand that definitely does play a role in your performance in many different ways, desire, etc. Medications. I'm a great example. I had an issue with high blood pressure several years ago. I opted to take an ACE inhibitor at the time instead of a beta blocker. Why? These beta blockers actually cause erectile dysfunction in men. Same thing can happen. So depending on class of medication and you're having issues with sexual dysfunction, any one of the categories I talked about earlier, consult with your pharmacist at least. And then if you need a medication change, consult with your healthcare provider on that. Mental health, which I'll cover more deeply. So I'm not going to beat this one up too hard right now. That was not an innuendo. Okay, just so you know, that was an accidental. And then on any of these underlying health conditions, so cardiovascular disease, we're talking about poor circulation, which is a major contributing factor to sexual dysfunction. Neurological issues such as Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes usually has to do with blood flow. Urological makes sense. Psychological, which is sort of back into that mental health part of stuff, and then hormone imbalances. So, and those hormone imbalances really can depend on a lot of different situations, not just your age. So I said earlier when I talked about mental health, I'd get into it a little bit deeper. In all honesty, I feel like the majority, it's probably going a little too far out there. I just feel like a lot of what's going on with people with sexual dysfunction really is in between your ears. I know that personally, when I'm having a stressful day, it takes me a lot more time to get in the mood. And I've actually had periods in my life over the last, 4 or 5 last 3 or 4 when my marriage was, not necessarily as pleasant as it could be, where, I was just so stressed out or upset about something that, I could really care less of whether or not I was going to have sex or not. Or I had something stressful going on in my workday and just wasn't able to be aroused. And so these are things that I think that we all don't really pay attention to when we go to get quote treated, from a healthcare provider. They're usually just, going straight at it with the blue pill or whatever without really digging to the underlying reasons that people have a condition. And with stress being and mental health issues being such a huge issue, especially now with COVID and post COVID, these, and you can see right here, like why. So stress causes this low physical and emotional satisfaction for desire. It affects arousal by disrupting the production of gonadotropin, which decreases the production of testosterone and estradiol. Those are two important, I mentioned earlier. Women need more estrogen, and why that affects sexual dysfunction, or when you don't have enough. Testosterone plays a role as well. And then in men, of course, so it affects arousal this way. Stress increases the sympathetic nervous system activity, which can inhibit blood flow to your genitals. So basically decreasing arousal for both men and women. Erectile dysfunction. And again, keep in mind that an erection, most people think of erection when they think of men, but when we're talking about a clitoral arousal, that is also having to do with, that is a form of erectile dysfunction. A lot of people don't think about it that way, but if you get into the physiology, what's really going on in the body, that is what's happening. So stress causes this increase in vasoconstriction, which I just mentioned in the bullet point just above. So that can affect, I said here the penis, but I just mentioned it can affect the women as well. Cortisol production decreases the sex hormone production. Years ago, when I was going through a real stressful period in my life, I think I just mentioned it, my cortisol level was 1.5 times higher than the max in the range. And at the same time, I actually had very low free testosterone. And my physician friend wanted to give me testosterone. I'm like, no, I just need to manage my stress and my testosterone level will get back to normal. Granted, even though I was in my mid to upper 50s. And then we see that stress has an impact on the brain signals. Again, controlling blood flow. Primarily, the research is on to the man's penis, but in this case, I feel like women, it also can revolve back to you as well. Sexual pain. This one is actually, I hate to say cool, it was interesting research. How about that? On so the psychological issues, primarily women who had been sexually abused actually were much more likely to have pain during sex. And actually, it was a very big deterrent. So those physiological and psychological issues can play an important role in whether or not you have painful sex. Hormones, I kind of already discussed it, so I don't want to get too long-winded on this. And then if you tie all these together are why really I feel like that people actually have trouble having an orgasm. I mean, if your desire is low, makes sense. Arousal, same thing. You're not getting turned on. You're not getting erect. You're having pain. That's actually one of the biggest reasons I understood from postmenopausal women. There's a thinning of the vaginal wall that often leads to pain, also decreases moisture. And so that's like one of the biggest reasons or deterrent for women that have gone through menopause to really not want to have sexual relations. And then hormones obviously make sense. I know I was really long-winded on all those things, at least in my head I was. And now I'm going to cover some of the supplements. And now you're going to see this list. It's actually pretty limited. And the ingredients that I'm talking about today, if you know of one that I didn't mention, I'm always open. If you approach me with you're ticked off, I didn't mention your brand, get over it. I don't have time for that to mention every brand or whatever that's on the market. But just keep in mind that these ingredients I'm mentioning actually had to have clinical substantiation to be included. So except for when I get one area I'm going to cover are supplements for stress. There really aren't many that have clinical substantiation for the topic today, but since stress is a major underlying, I think it's probably one of the biggest underlying risk factors, other than maybe cardiovascular disease and diabetes or uncontrollable blood sugar. But anyway, let's get into these. So L-arginine, citrulline, these arginines increases testosterone levels in men. It also improves circulation. Citrulline, same thing, improves circulation. They cause vasodilation. They cause a nitric oxide production to help increase the size of the vasculature that's going into where you need it to be. In this case, we're talking about into your private sections, we'll call it. And so anytime we can improve blood flow to there, we will see improvements in perhaps erectile dysfunction, arousal, both men and women, etc. Shatavari, a lot of people may not have even heard of this. This comes from Ayurveda. This has been shown to be a female libido enhancer. Actual mechanism I couldn't track down. Tribulus, a lot of people have heard of this. I think it's more so been thought of for men and for people that are, into working out, etc. But we can see that Tribulus actually does work in both men and women. In women, it helps improve sexual desire, arousal, satisfaction, orgasm, decrease pain, and support lubrication. I mean, shoot, man. I mean, I know there's more than three, but I was going that's a trifecta of what you want in a supplement. If we're talking about kind of a catch-all for sexual dysfunction for women, and you can see in men, it's kind of the same thing. We see improved sexual desire, intercourse satisfaction, increases levels of testosterone, LH, DHEA, etc. So we're seeing, again, across multiple areas, Tribulus can be very supportive for sexual dysfunction. Would I want to hang my hat on that? And by the way, that could be an innuendo right there. I don't know if everybody caught that one, but if you could hang your hat on it, I wouldn't necessarily hang my hat just on saying one ingredient's going to cover all. I really think when you're formulating, we need to, and I'll cover that at the end, look for multiple ingredients with different mechanisms of action to really get the job done. Vitex. Vitex is more so in the female category, helping improve sexual satisfaction, function, arousal, and desire. Again, depending on what your needs are, we're covering a lot of them right there, especially with regards to female health. So the next one is actually a combination of two ingredients. It goes under the trademark of Tesnor. Clinical studies on this show it helps support hormones, helps increase testosterone levels. This is an oldie but goodie, Damiana. This one goes back to my very beginning in natural medicine, back when I was still a practicing pharmacist. The thing is, though, that Damiana is one of the probably the top adulterated botanicals that we have right now. And so in this case, I mentioned the trade name ingredient Liboost or Liboost and libido. Get it? Liboost. This addresses in their studies circulation, libido, and hormones. Their studies showed in women it improves sexual desire, decreases vaginal wall thinning, which I mentioned earlier, which is part of that painful sex, sexual interaction, increases vaginal lubrication, and decreases pain during intercourse, which of course I just said that's probably because of the decreasing of the thinning of the wall and the increased lubrication. And then in men helps relax the vasculature. So we're getting increased blood flow and also supporting an increase in testosterone levels. I can tell you that when I was officially divorced, I actually was, as a joke, given this supplement by the people who actually produce it. They thought it'd be funny to give a guy that's going to be newly single a supplement that would help his libido, which I think is almost this kind of a funny, sick kind of joke to do to a guy in his 50s. But in all honesty, I started taking it. And I'm not more out of my own insecurity, to be honest with you. I hadn't been, quote, on the market in quite some time. And, very interesting to actually experience it myself. I'm not going to give any testimonies. That would be a little bit inappropriate right now. Fenugreek comes up two different times here as an extract, one under the name of Libifem. This one scientifically shown to address desire, arousal, and hormones. It works really well for helping support healthy hormone levels, primarily the estradiol testosterone ratios. Remember earlier I said most people focus on the estrogen part of it, but testosterone really does play a significant role for women with regards to libido. And that's shown to increase sexual arousal, desire, frequency. Yep, people wanted to have sex more frequently. Well, women in this case wanted to have sex more frequently. I think everybody wins on that one, right? And then with regards to testofen, again, clinical research showed that it helps increase or address libido and testosterone or hormone levels, and overall helps promote sexual desire. So those are the brief supplements. Again, I could probably keep going on others that are out there, but I just want to give everybody a little whiff of what's available, what I felt like has more solid science. If you do have a scientifically substantiated ingredient in this category, please reach out to me. My contact information will be at the end of my presentation because I love to learn and I'd love to include it in the next article I plan to write on this topic. So with regarding stress, address the stress. Again, these ingredients don't have scientific substantiation per se with regards to our topic, but these are some of the key botanicals. Well, there's some non-botanicals here. So some of the key supplements that work with regards to stress. These are alphabetical. So if you're wondering why your ingredient might be down lower, I did it alphabetical based on the general name. So ashwagandha, there's several branded ingredients within ashwagandha. Bacopa, same thing, multiple trademarked, clinically substantiated brands. Those two are the adaptogenic. Holy basil's adaptogenic as well. And then the caralluma, that's might be not familiar. Some cool studies on caralluma. GABA is super popular, more so probably in the sleep category than stress. Same thing with L-theanine, good for stress and sleep. One of my personal favorites, and actually do some consulting for them, so be fully transparent, is saffron, or the Affron ingredient. I do some consulting for them, but they actually have the patent in the US for saffron use for stress and mood. And then another one of my favorites, succulent from South Africa, Zembrin. These are, granted, there's a ton of other things we could use. Most people that are magnesium deficient or stress are magnesium deficient. So magnesium always plays a really important role for people that do have issues with stress. And then last but not least, let's formulate for success. I try to get people to get outside the box without necessarily producing tablets and capsules. Sometimes that's limited by the ingredients that you're using, but if you could try to create a functional food or a functional beverage, maybe find a food or a beverage that is complementary to supporting sexual health and sexual well-being, and then pick the areas that you want to support. Again, if you want to accomplish the best results, you have a target, you use one stone, in this case one ingredient, your likelihood of hitting the target might be slim. But if you've got a handful of pebbles and you throw it at the target, you're more likely to hit. So picking those areas to support that maybe have circulation or hormone or emotional, whatever it might be, and then again looking for those ingredients that actually have those multiple mechanisms of action. And then shoot for the stars, baby. Look for those, look for being creative. Stick packs and gummies are big here in the US. They're not as big around other parts of the world. Powders, beverages, shots, whatever you can do. But get creative and have things that can incorporate into someone's everyday lifestyle. And I want to thank you, by the way. This is the contact information. I'm super active on LinkedIn. But I want to appeal to people. If you do have an ingredient that fits into my presentation today that I didn't cover and it's yours, it's clinically substantiated, I'd really love to learn about it. So either email me or reach out through LinkedIn. And I'm going to turn this back over to Sonia, who is going to pummel me with questions, I'm hoping.
I'm not going to be pummeling. I was looking on the thread. It doesn't look like we have any questions, but I have a question for you. I know that you have been talking specifically about men and women, as I prefaced this health condition corner by saying our conversation about sexual health was focused on the biology. So what about people who biologically are both? how would you formulate for someone who is intersex?
Uh, I would formulate depending on what parts they have, to be honest with you. So if someone is transitioning, they're like halfway through switching from male to female or vice versa, I'm still going to support whatever their current physiology is. The only caveat to that might be, um, even with still having all of your original parts, we'll say, a lot of times people will start hormone replacement therapy quicker than doing any other reconstructive type of work. With those people, you might want to consult with your healthcare provider about using any of the supplements that really do work on hormones, because you could throw yourself out of whack. Because if you still have all your original parts, as I'm saying throughout my presentation, then you still have your testicles or ovaries, then supporting them might actually backfire on you. So again, Sonia, you and I were talking about somebody that we knew mutually, well, not mutually, but we knew, and they were they still had a vagina, but they identified completely and had been going through treatments to be a male now, but still enjoyed, having sex in their vagina because they didn't have reconstruction done or whatever.
Right.
So in that case, you're supporting whatever parts. In this case, I guess this is kind of overly redundant now, but that's how I would approach it.
Yeah, I think that we're talking about, would it still be that you would have in later years vaginal dryness, but you have a high level of testosterone? So
Yep.
it's kind of like, how would you formulate for that? And intersex people are born with both parts. So
Yep.
it's interesting. Really appreciate your feedback and your advice. With definitely contact your medical provider for information so that you are taking the what you should be taking.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like you need to support what it ever. I mean, it does boil down to like the parts your car has, and you got to support what's there, whichever one you're trying to use, or you would like to, in this case, perhaps obtain pleasure, decrease pain, whatever it might be. Like that's what you need to go back and support. And I gave some great examples of all of that today, I feel. So hopefully that helps
Absolutely.
people.
Yep. Well, I think that is it for today, but we do want to do a quick plug for the next Health Condition Corner, which is on July 11th. Same time, same place. David, can you tell us a little bit about the topic that you'll be covering?
So glad you brought it up, because I said to you beforehand I was going to talk about it in my intro and I completely blew past it. So God bless you for that. Yeah. So we are going to, I guess it's me, myself, and I will be talking about beauty from within. So it's all things internal for making your skin healthier, whether it's from detoxification, protection from ultraviolet damage, acne, you name it, we'll be talking about it.
Excellent. And David had mentioned earlier that we have the previous Health Condition Corner. I think it's on the Supply Side YouTube channel. There is a Health Conditions Corner playlist. So if you want to see the previous episodes or even, review this one from today, pop on over to the Supply Side YouTube channel and look for that Health
One more
Conditions.
thing. Hey,
Yes,
I want to make sure that people also submit requests for topics. Um,
absolutely.
we I'm sorry, you did. I apologize. Were you going there already, Sonia?
I think that we'll be doing that more. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
always open for feedback. Absolutely.
yeah. Because I'd love to know. Like, I mean, granted, I'm pretty much picking these topics that I've been doing so far. I have topics all the way scheduled through September, but please submit. I don't want to just be blabbing for my own self good. I want to be able to make sure I'm covering topics that everybody's interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again, David. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. Until next time, take care.